2, 1. Welcome to Common Mansplaining! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back. Christian, how's it going?
Better. My voice is still not 100%, so bear with me.
That's fair. That's fair. I don't think, yeah. Sometimes my knee is definitely not 100%. This is what it's like getting old, guys. So, like, for those of you out there, you can appreciate that the common man does eventually wear down, right? We don't last forever. So, this is how it is. But we're going to do our best to stay alive and keep the common sense flowing. Today, we're going to talk about Venezuela. Venezuela, we've talked about this a couple of times in recent history. It's kind of a big deal now in the southern hemisphere. This is our only real conflict that America's actually kind of involved in. Like the others, we're involved in everything. Like America has its hands in every pie, but this is the only one that we actually have any kind of personal interest in. The rest is like just us getting in somebody else's business. So right now, where we stand, just to catch some people up, we've blown up somewhere between like 20 or 30 Venezuelan drug boats. We sent
some Colombian drug boats, but lots of South American drug boats, but mostly Venezuelan.
Right. So mostly Venezuela. It's all in the Caribbean, right? And then we sent an aircraft carrier group in like September or something, and now and since November, some of the rhetoric is really kind of like livened up. Trump has spoken a couple of times about moving from sea operations to land. I'm not really sure. I don't think anybody's really sure what that means. It could mean anything from we're going to intercept somebody who's trying to get across the Mexican border to like a full-scale land invasion of Venezuela, right? Nobody, of course, the left likes to catastrophize everything, make it seem like that's going to be the end of the world. So we're going to talk about that. And, Trump has gotten a little bit personal with Maduro, saying, basically we don't acknowledge him any longer as the president. We have somebody else in mind, and you should get out of your country now while you have a chance and stuff. Trump's typical, very blatant, very direct rhetoric. As we
it's not unique. I mean, the Maduro was also opposed by Obama, the first president, Trump, and Biden. So it's sort of America has a long history of opposing his administration.
Yeah. Venezuela's kind of been they've been kind of a thorn in our side this whole time. They're not very aligned with Western values. They have a lot of like ties to China and Russia and Iran and et cetera, et cetera. We'll talk about that too. But why don't you give us, Christian, a little history of the situation in Venezuela and why we're interested in them in the first place?
Well, before I get to that, I will in a second. I wonder how interested we are. Just in general,
right?
I think Americans right now are really interested in Trump's domestic policy. And deporting Venezuelan immigrants. He calls himself the peace president, and I could list the 8 wars he says he stopped. A lot of those, a lot of people, aren't really aware of, or certainly on. And largely, if we're not in a shooting war, nobody cares. Right? So the fact that this is a shooting thing that could escalate is the only reason why anybody cares.
Right.
So let's just frame that out right now. That the politics of it is this kind of foreign policy is frankly low priority for American people politically. It's not something that they are showing and asking for. But it still is. Trump sees it as part of good governance. So Venezuela, let's just talk about 21st century or 20th century forward. In the 20s, when oil started to be a big deal, they discovered oil in Venezuela. And they happened to have the #1 confirmed oil reserves in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
And although we have although we have some unconfirmed ones that are probably
to the level that are exploitable, right. Anyway, and there's some that are in that we exploit in the Gulf that aren't technically international waters and stuff that don't count. These are within their territory, within the region of Venezuela. They have the largest, reserves. So what happened with that was foreign investment came in and started, like Royal Dutch Shell or these companies came in and started setting up, developing this oil and paying huge fees to Venezuela to exploit these oil fields. So that infusion of cash, they started to modernize their economy, and right, they are right on the equator and really jungle. It's very intense building there, and their agriculture. I mean, it's yeah. So there's agriculture, things will grow there, but it's intense. But they were use this investment to kind of grow, and they generally were sort of a right wing, center right capitalist democracy through most of the 20th century, and reliably sort of aligned with the U.S. and not somebody that became a problem.
Right.
Starting at the end of the 90s, they elected they had a booming economy. Had the third highest standard of living in the Western Hemisphere.
Yep.
Because oil prices were really high. There was a spike there in the end of the 90s, and they were doing very well, but they were still capitalist. Well, the people that weren't doing as well were able to elect a very leftist leader, and with their constitution, he was able to turn the country in left in many ways, and turn the country into what is now called the petro state.
Yeah.
And petro state is not a compliment.
No.
So essentially his government, he dropped taxes, which sounded great, but he became very, very reliant on these oil exports, right?
Yep.
Well, they had been using that oil money to develop a more diverse economy. He was sort of not doing that, and he was putting cronies or people that were political allies in positions at these oil companies and so used corruption, and the production of the oil companies immediately start going down because you don't have really sharp oil professionals running them. The production starts dropping, and the foreign companies were putting up with that for a while, but then they start pushing back because their profits are being impacted. And his response to that, when they wanted to put real oil people involved, was to nationalize, i.e., confiscate and take over all the foreign countries, including investment from the U.S., Europe, and other places, and make them now owned by the Venezuelan state. And so when you do that, it sounds in the short term, hey, you're taking over all this billions of dollars of capital investment infrastructure, and now you can just sell your oil and you don't have to give any of it to foreign countries. Isn't this wonderful? Right? So that's very, very, very short term, but it has a chilling effect. Nobody wants to invest in your country when they're worried that you're just going to nationalize and essentially steal it, take it away as soon as you make it successful.
Yep.
And when he nationalized it, he continued the same thing, using corruption to put political allies in places where production continued to drop, while the oil he sold, gasoline in his country, sold for like 20 cents a gallon. So they made no money domestically. It was all based on foreign exports, and now foreign countries stopped wanting to buy their oil, started embargoes against some because of these policies.
Of course.
And the U.S. had ramped up their oil production, things like this, and we're now able to sell oil for the first time ever internationally, when before we weren't. So he turned to China, right? Of the roads of all the countries that oppose the United States. China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, and started, hanging out with these guys. So
got involved with the wrong crowd.
Yes. All the while, the economy and the standard of living in Venezuela tanked. They started having runaway inflation, and started having anybody who wasn't a leftist, right, started being persecuted. They were being denied food now. They couldn't get these sweet jobs, types of things. And so we started getting a lot of Venezuelan refugees. And I
Yeah.
even work with two people who are legal immigrants from Venezuela who
Nice.
left during that time. And my in
In
the
Cal
roofing
in LA.
contractor I work at,
Yeah.
and while they love Venezuela, it's just for political reasons they just can't live there, right? They can't work there, they can't have a family if they want all those things.
Right.
So, so we got that first wave of people, which was essentially the most productive, people that could come here legally, afford
Right.
to settle down, bring what assets they had at the time, and could sort of recognize they could fly here, come here
Yeah.
directly. They
Right.
didn't have to come up through Panama and things. They got to pay a smuggler. But as things got worse, um, then you started having huge groups of people, yes, and the poor, which were supposedly on the side um, of the left and of this communist takeover. Now they all of a sudden are finding their lives very impacted, and they start wanting to leave. They're fleeing into Brazil, into Colombia, in numbers that they can't support, and so
Right.
ultimately, large numbers of them start coming north. And this is when Tren de Agua, or the train, starts building up their influence because they control very good the smuggling of people through,
Yep.
into Panama, from South America into Panama, and essentially raise their profile there. Well, then Hugo Chavez passed away, died cancer, but his handpicked successor, Maduro, continued. Maduro basically continued all the same policies. He's considered to be a Castro, but or not, sorry, like Chavez, only slightly
Right.
less intelligent,
Right. Right.
less savvy, less charismatic speaker, less likable. He's basically less likable, less intelligent, and it's been a disaster,
Yeah.
and has been very antagonistic to the U.S. He
Of
has
course.
been bolstered though because Colombia, which has a functioning democracy and has quieted their narco wars, um, has elected a more leftist president right now than they were always a little more right wing, who's a little more sympathetic to Venezuela and a little more critical of the U.S. And so he's taken that as like unimpeachable support. Maduro has anyway, and so has finally one of the big things he's turned to that is drugs, and maybe not drug production so much as using his failed state as a place to move drugs through. Has no problems with that if he can make money from it. Corruption. And the United States is the main destination of these dangerous drugs, i.e., um, cocaine, fentanyl, other things. And long ago have declared those to be clear and present dangers to the state.
Right.
Now, different presidents have prosecuted that war in different ways, different time. And Trump himself, has done things to try to attack the market here and do different sort of targeted um, attacks in different other areas of the world. Has finally decided that what he can do is use the equipment apparatus of the military to target any of this activity
Yeah.
and directly and call it as a threat to America, call them terrorists, not drug smugglers, but narco terrorists. That classification opens up a whole new way to deal with them. And that's what they're essentially looking at Venezuela now, like we looked at Afghanistan, as harboring terrorists.
Yeah.
And his thing for regime change would be exactly like our claim for kicking the Taliban out of power in Afghanistan, is that they were allowing dangerous terrorists to operate in their country without being checked. And that
Right.
was enough for Afghanistan. He thinks it might be enough. Um, Rand Paul is the Republican who's standing against this and demanding that he make his case to Congress before escalating this. But that's a short history
Yeah.
of Venezuela's conflict with the United States and the West.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Right. So like that catches us up. And of course, so now let's move to the most recent event, the one that's lit up the headlines as of last night today. recently among these boat strikes, these drug boat strikes. Well, first, before I even get into this, I just want to say, the rhetoric around this, the narratives that have been crafted around this for like the past week or two, maybe even, the past month, the left has kind of been saying, oh, these aren't even drug boats. We're just blowing up random fishing vessels and stuff like that. This is all war crimes because these guys are just 100% innocent civilians
Yeah.
who have nothing to do. Now, I
A
want
humble
everyone.
fisherman out for a pleasure cruise through eel-infested waters, right? Yeah.
Right. I want everyone to just take pause and realize that the narratives have shifted, right? And I just want everyone on the left to just kind of like do a little introspection and realize when the left wing media stations have dropped the game that these are not drug ships, that should tell you something. Right, because I'm going to say this. I'm going to tell you I'm going to be the first person to tell you that I hate these drug boat strikes. I do not like executing people for the crime of drug running, even if they're bad people. I don't believe in the death penalty at all. So even if I did think that they were, thoroughly guilty and needed to face harsh justice, this wouldn't be it, right? I
Yeah,
think this
we
is
had enforcement before Coast Guard people stopping these boats
right,
when they were classified as drug runners. Now they're
right.
classified as terrorists. That's the difference. But yeah,
Right. And look, and like I said, just because I dislike something, and I dislike this, I want to say that a million times so I don't get taken out of context, so I don't get misunderstood, so I don't get, I hate these drug boat strikes. That being said, I will freely admit that what we were doing before wasn't working, right? We must have, arrested millions of these guys coming across the border trying to bring drugs in, and it just doesn't stop the trade. It just doesn't. Now, I don't know if this is actually doing it or if Trump just claims it's doing it, but it seems to be a little bit more successful. But this is just one of those cases where and I've mentioned this before, I'm a man of principle. So I will stick to my guns, even if the result is positive, right? I'll still say this is a bad thing, even if it's working, right? Just like tariffs. I don't like tariffs, even though it might be working. I will still say that I don't like them, right? I don't like these drug boat strikes. So and now that I've said that a million times over, right? Uh, just note that the narrative is shifted, right? And now nobody's pretending that these are fishing vessels because we know they're not. And matter of fact, some of the videos, including the one that we're about to talk about, are so crystal clear that it's obvious that it is a like turbo speedboat that is heavily laden with cargo. Like you can see it. It's that crystal
on
clear.
deck, yeah.
Right. Like it's not even a question. There's no fishing gear on the boat. Like we can see this. It's that clear. So just understand these aren't fishing vessels. These are drug craft, right? They always were. They always will be. This is what they do, right? Now, that being said, all right, I don't like them. I don't like these drug boat strikes. Now, this most recent one, the one that's causing all the stories in the paper, we shot it at a drug boat, and apparently we didn't take out everyone. I guess we didn't even completely destroy the craft. We just mostly disabled it. And there were, I guess, two guys that were just like kind of hanging on the sides for dear life. And at some point in time, the decision was made whether it was via somebody's order, like a command order, or maybe it was independent operators, but I think it was a command order from the admiral.
Yeah, from the admiral.
Basically said, go finish the job, right? Go back and eliminate the rest of the craft, eliminate the rest of the people involved. Now, that's what everybody calls a double tap, right? So that's going back and executing people who are already helpless, shipwrecked soldiers.
Yeah.
Enemy combatants, whatever, right? So that's what's causing all the ruckus. And then, of course, everybody wants to go after Pete Hegseth because he's just I guess the target from the left. He's just an unpopular guy. It's funny. I saw this thing on the news the other day that it's like out of all the secretaries of defense or secretaries of war going back like to World War II, more polls have been done of Hegseth than any other secretary of defense like ever. Like basically except for like the SecDef during like World War II. Like that was the last time they had that much news feed, stuff on a sec war. And that's insane to me. Like, why do they even care so much? But it's just like they're constantly trying to pick away at him, like, oh, he's not qualified, and oh, this and that, and wham. Meanwhile, he's absolutely qualified. He's a decorated combat veteran of many, 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 many years. He's extremely intelligent. He's got multiple Ivy League degrees. I could go on and on. Anyway, point is, they want to go after him before even knowing whether or not it was him that gave the order. Now, the first thing that to know about this is the Washington Post came out with this story, right? So they came out with the original narrative, the original crafted left-wing narrative to attack Pete Hegseth, and their story was very unflattering. It basically said that like Hegseth said, "No, kill them all," like after they missed the first time, like that he literally told him to go back and like continue executing people, which was like wildly untrue and was debunked by another left-wing major media source, the New York Times, right? So it's wild when the left-wing media, mainstream media, is being debunked by the left-wing media. That's when you've gone off the deep end, right? And so, of course, the New York Times said, no, that order was not given. He didn't explicitly say kill everybody. He certainly didn't like countermand orders and say go back and do stuff. None of that happened. So where we stand now, I guess Admiral Bradley, who was the admiral in charge of the thing, gave an account this morning and said, this is why I did it. This is the situation on the ground in the water. This is what was going on. They were still armed was one thing, right? Even though they probably weren't in a good position to utilize their arms, right? Not hanging off the side of a boat, but they were trying to continue the operation. Basically, they were calling in buddies to try to like pick up the drugs and continue the operation. Yeah. And I'll just go ahead and come right out and say it. I don't agree with his decision, but understand the reason I don't agree with his decision isn't because of some obscure international law about shipwrecked soldiers. It's because I don't believe that he should have ever been killing people in the first place, right? So like to me, it doesn't make a difference. Like my first question that I would ask is, if the mission is to go kill these people, which is what the mission was, right? And we failed once, why would that all of a sudden change what we're allowed to do? Because the whole goal was to kill these guys, right? This is like, to me, the weird thing about this is like we send like a sniper into another nation to shoot at somebody and he misses and we're like, no, you can't take a second shot. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy to me. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want us killing people. I think that's terrible. But if that's the mission, why on earth would we not be able to continue to execute that mission if that's the goal?
All right. And that's so one thing, a couple things about this. So this was not a hidden classified thing. Hundreds of people witnessed this. It was broadcast. Right. People in the Pentagon, people in on site in the Gulf, people at Fort Bragg. And there were many, more than one legal JAG naval lawyers present to be consulted, that they consult on these things, right? When it was just enforcement before, they didn't need to, but now that it's their enemy combatants, now they can't override orders, but they can advise on legality of things. And so the narrative now is that the admiral was advised that it would be legal, maybe not sporting, right? Not very sportsmanlike, because their situation, right? Yeah, normal shipwrecked soldiers, all right, enemy combatants, who are just trying to save their own lives, are exempt. If they are trying to save, war-making capability, not just their own lives, or i.e., to succeed in their mission, that's a different story. Right. And so that obviously that's what the counsel he was given. That's the justification he gave. Right. Again, a lot of this teeters on nuance, right? This changed how we classified these boats. These boats are not a new thing, but we're now classifying them as not just drug smugglers, but as narco terrorists and enemy combatants, and that's what's allowing us to unlock full military thing against them. Now, should we get approval from Congress to do this? Absolutely. Is this So is it going to be controversial? Are there going to be calls that people disagree with? Absolutely. I, without knowing all the facts, right, can't support or or withhold support at this time. It does seem unsportsmanlike, if
Yeah.
we're or unfair if they were merely trying to save their own lives, if they're just right and they're trying to get away from the craft and get on
Right.
something floating. But if something determined, right, something about it different, because yeah, you said the craft were not destroyed,
Right.
and so with them staying close to the craft, the efforts to destroy the boats certainly is legal.
Yes.
And if the people should know that they are targets and they don't flee after they've been attacked once, um, sort of would indicate that they're accepting that risk.
Yeah.
Um,
eh,
I
To an
know.
extent.
Well. I mean, again, I'm not a military lawyer, but these were things, and so the calls were made. Um, one of the things is this is meant to be a deterrent, right?
Yes.
We do
Absolutely.
what we want. We don't want to kill these people. We want them to
No.
stop sending boats of drugs to America, even
Right.
if it's lucrative. Like, look, find something else to do to make money, but
Right.
stop doing this. And so we want it to be public. We want the videos to get out there. Even this debate for us is sort of politics, but we want everybody in Venezuela, every drug lord, to see it out there and see that the US military is killing and not caring about appearing to be, um, you
Right.
know, appearing to be cruel and going after it. And that they will just really look, the bag's up, let's find some other scam,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
that's what we want, right? To win this war, quote unquote, win this war, we just want them to stop sending boats. That's the whole goal, right? The same thing in Afghanistan. We just wanted the terrorists to stop plotting attacks on America, and for the
Right.
government to stop supporting them. So a lot of the posturing, a lot of going into war is posturing, and
Sure.
effective posturing is acting like you're eager to go in and
Hmm.
maybe even overstating your goals. So that, like, hey, yeah, we're going to have regime change, blah, 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 blah. We're going to make Venezuelan a new territory of the United States, blah, blah, blah. So that hopefully they'd be like, oh, okay, well, we'll just police and stop the drug boats from leaving our shores,
Yeah.
which is all we want. You negotiate from a position of crazy down to what you actually want, which
So let me
is just for them.
let me ask you this: what are your thoughts
Sure.
on one very common critique I hear is, oh, these particular boats would not have had sufficient fuel to get all the way to America. That's their criticism, right?
Mhm.
So why shoot that particular boat? Because the position it was in, it wouldn't have made it all the way to America on its fuel tank that we're aware of.
So we track it the whole time till it reaches the refueling point and then blow it up with the refuelers.
That's why I've always thought the same
Right,
thing too.
right.
I thought
So
this was
this is the part
particularly
we would
fortunate.
send our police activities to stop this well down there, right? And
Yeah.
they'd go through the Panama Canal and would bus us in the Pacific Ocean, down by Colombia, way down. We're not waiting until they get past Cuba, right?
Yeah.
There's too much open sea. The sea, I don't know if people know this, it's really big.
Pretty big.
And
Right.
it's easy to hide in, even with modern technology. And so when you have an opportunity, you have a guy in your sights that within range of your assets, and especially because you're doing it as a deterrent, right? If somebody goes out and you kill them quickly, it's seen more as a deterrent. If you wait 2 or 3 days, they see they have more opportunity to evade you. If
Right.
you do it within, 4 hours of them leaving, right, then they're like, oh, we're really they're on to us. Let's do something else. And so I think it's a more effective deterrent to do it this way. And the goal should be limiting killings, right? By having this deterrent rather than letting them think, oh, we can get away with this, and them sending thousands of boats and we kill them all and now we've killed more people.
Right.
So make this very public, right? make our names clean. Just right. It doesn't matter if you can sell them here. We don't want those drugs. They're dangerous. They're illegal here, and we will be treated when you are acting against our express wishes in order for you not to sell something dangerous and illegal poisons in the U.S. We are now have upped the game in classifying you as a terrorist because you know that you want to terrorize America with this poison.
So I want to, one of the comments that we're getting from Matt Adol is we need to stop this. What exactly are you hoping that we're going to stop? I just want to hear from you precisely what you're hoping to stop. One of the things that I get a lot is that, somehow us pundits online are going to be able to carve out, foreign policy agreements for Donald Trump. I don't even know if, if his close staff, Marco Rubio probably can't even carve out foreign policy agreements for Trump. Trump does his own thing. Now, and once again, I'll say it. I don't agree with these drug boat strikes. That's just me personally. I won't
common sense. And I think that for us, that common sense is that we prefer not to do these drug boat strikes.
Right, absolutely. And right. I don't think that Trump really wants to do them either. I think he's just, Trump is one of those, he's very disruptive, right? He's the kind of guy that looks at the situation. He's like, all right, this is what we've done in the past. This hasn't worked. I'm going to do something new, regardless of how extreme it is, right? That's just his style. And it's not like, while I hate every one of these drug boat strikes, I'm not surprised with the way, with the place that Trump took it. It's not oh my God, Trump would never do something like that. Like, no, this is just another day at the office with Trump. This is like, okay, yeah, that tracks, and I hate it. I hate that we have to kill people over this. I don't think that, if, the biggest problem, and see, I think this is, let me know what your thoughts are on this, Christian.
Sure.
Because Mexico brings a lot of drugs into America, and Colombia and all the others, like all of them. We see a lot of different, we see a lot of different drugs coming to America from a lot of different places. And Mexico is arguably the largest quantity, right? Especially of fentanyl. But here's my theory. I think that Venezuela represents a unique situation. They're the only place where the head of state is like essentially publicly complicit with this operation, right? Everywhere else, Mexico has plenty of corruption, and I'm sure they have local support here and there, but at least at the federal level, they're publicly against the cartel, at least at that level. But I feel like Maduro, different from everybody else, is like, all right, yeah, cartels come on. Like, I'm sure he's getting kickbacks and stuff, and I get that.
And he enjoys that it's poison that's poisoning the U.S. and embarrassing the U.S. and killing United States citizens. Absolutely.
The only other thing I could think of is the ties to Russia and China and Iran. I mean, those are the things that set Venezuela apart. That, and Cuba, I guess. But like those are the only things is that why we're doing it? Because I could see us taking the same action in Mexico. I mean, we'd have to invade sovereign territory, but I could see us doing it. I could see us like sending reapers in to wipe out obvious drug fields in Mexico, or, I could see us do. I mean, and for that matter, I wouldn't put it past Trump, right? So like, let this be a newsflash to you drug dealers out there. If you are going to operate, maybe leave United States off of your drug trade. Maybe.
Yeah, it's going to be you're going to risk violence, right?
Yeah.
And part of the thing is, by Trump, this is again negotiation, right? By acting like you're very eager to, or that you're willing to classify drug cartels as terrorists and use not just DEA forces, but the full force of our special forces, our Air Force, our satellites, our bleeding edge military technology to disrupt your efforts and kill your people, not just affect your population, but kill your people, is meant to be so chilling that it will prompt Mexican officials into action. Now, the locals struggle with that. Any mayor that comes out against a cartel ends up usually dead. But the federal level, they can do some things. There's some stuff they're trying to weigh. They're still having debates about, whether to what level they're willing to go. Now, Trump wants to set this really kind of crazy bar that for you is unreasonable, and I think common sense is unreasonable. But I think he'd like to negotiate it down to what we would really accept, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, what's that?
it's not it's at least Venezuelans' navies at least trying to police these a little bit.
Would be
If they
nice.
would bust some of them, if they'd stop them, right? If they do some enforcement to try to stop, do something like this, and take it seriously, and not just be corrupt. It's because Venezuela's had under Maduro has had a history of trying to prod and antagonize the U.S. and align with any, like, the axis of evil or anybody that's anti-U.S. Has not earned him a long leash, and
Yeah.
we don't want to take his things as good graces. So he would have to do a lot now to get us to back off. But ultimately, this is what I think he's trying to do the appeal to the drug lords themselves, that the risk of losing money is one thing, but the risk of death right now, it's to people in their boats.
So,
And he's making the implicit thing that we can locate you where you're at, and we will classify you as terrorists and come after you, just like the Taliban, just like
Let-
Al Qaeda, and
let me
that they will back up.
let me just play devil's advocate here, right? Because I mean,
Yep.
I this is my problem with it. In addition to the fact that I just don't like loss of life, I don't like. I just regard life with the utmost sanctity. I don't believe that we should ever be so flippant about it. But let's say that this is getting through to them. I don't know why it would. Explain to me why it would. Because if we arrest them and impound their drugs, they still lose the money. And if we take their manpower away and throw them in jail, they still lose the manpower. So either way, I don't understand why this.
As far as
It's not like
recruiting new
hold on,
people,
let me just finish the thought. It's not like El Chapo is going to sit in the boat, and let himself get shot. He doesn't give a crap about his foot soldiers, right? What do you?
well, they're recruiting foot soldiers willing to do it, right? And the cost of getting somebody, right? It was always right. If you're gonna drug mule, right? You say you're in a foreign country and somebody offers to pay you some money to move some cocaine across the border into America, right? And you're weighing that risk versus, say, I'll pay you $10 to do it. Why would I take the risk? I'm risking 10 years in jail, right? But if they raise it and they say, okay, $100,000 or something, now you're thinking about it. But then, if now all of a sudden, so now he's got to pay $100,000 to send to move all of his drugs through mules, right? But now, if you add in the quotient where not only am I risking 10 years in jail, I'm risking just being blown up and killed and dying in the middle of the ocean, right?
True.
So my price now for me to do this has now gone up so high that it's more than you would make with the drugs, right? If now the costs of somebody willing to perform the mission becomes unacceptable, right? Recruiting new foot soldiers and compensating them appropriate to the risk. That's usually the compensation has to exceed the risk. At what level, Eddie, you tell me this, at what price are you willing to get in a boat from Venezuela and hope that you can evade American naval activity and safely make it to a refueling station in, let's say, Tobago or the Cayman Islands after 3 days of riding hard? Is it 50 million? Is it 20 million? What is your number to be willing to do that?
Obviously, I wouldn't be for sale for this particular operation, but
well, I know.
if I'm putting on my like drug mule hat. I mean, yeah, it would have to be enough to set me up, for life if I'm going to risk my life for it.
Yeah,
It'd
yeah,
be
yeah. You do it once and you have to be set for life,
right,
right?
right,
So that price is up there. So now I guess if the guy dies and they don't have to pay it, then there's that risk there. But that's the type of thing. It's raising the price for this type of activity. Um, Ideally to make it not commercially viable,
right.
not economically make it make sense. We want them to see that their common
Yeah,
sense
fair enough.
incentivizing them to do something else.
Now,
Now, I mean, I don't know, that's maybe a more sanitized way of putting it. And
sure.
when we are talking about violence here and loss of life, but our goals really, I don't think are that we want to make a territory out of Venezuela, or that we want to,
Right,
invade to change the government to be U.S. friendly.
right.
We just want them to stop being antagonistic jerks and sending poison to America with zero enforcement. Like there's a lot they can do to appease us.
Yeah. There's definitely. I mean, yeah. Obviously, we would love for Venezuela to police its own waters. We'd love for them to like. I mean, what a crazy thought, right? A nation that arrests its own drug dealers. I don't know where that came from, right? Um, to to the point of like, who said it in here? Someone said it that let's see, I can't remember where it was, but it was like somebody was talking about our true goals here. I mean, I don't know that it's going to be a forever war. I think that Trump has clearly demonstrated that his style is opposed to that type of forever war, right? Like he's
Yeah,
obviously
absolutely.
indicated in Iran that he's not trying to get involved in
He
a like
wants achievable goals. He wants achievable goals.
right, and like yeah, even obviously, I don't think he would mind if like we sort of took all the oil from Venezuela. I don't think I don't think he'd be disappointed in those extra assets, but I don't think he's gonna like staff, army reserve there for years and years and years like we did in Afghanistan. That's not going to happen, right? That's just not. Even if it. But by the way, it would be more. It would be more achievable than it was in Afghanistan here, but that's not. That's beside the point. The point is it's just not Trump style. It's really something. It's not. He's something he's looking for. It's not really something that would actually gain us much benefit, right? And I think everybody knows that. Like I think we learned that from Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan. Like we learned it over the last century that that's just not really the war we want to be in. And I think Trump really took that to heart, right? You've seen him just not want to get involved in any kind of boots on the ground initiative, any kind of like long stay, any kind of forever war, anything that drags out. I think that's costly and it's bad for business. And I think that's all Trump really cares about is making the business engine greased. So yeah, I don't think
But
that we're
but but achieving your goals in a negotiation, you have to appear that you're willing to do more than that,
yeah.
right? So I think his posturing that he wants to and saying he wants a land invasion of Venezuela, I think is important so he can negotiate something short of that.
Think
I think
so. Now
yeah.
what happens if okay, obviously in the Middle East there's this thing where this like mind frame where they're just like we don't care that you could turn our entire nation into a glass sheet 75,000 times over. We're going to fight anyway, right? Like, so I wonder if Venezuela has that same like problem. I'm hoping not, but like they're already starting to amass their forces. And see, this is what worries me is like Venezuela's literally ramping up military drills and like bringing their navy into like to the coastal waters so that they can like get ready for a defense. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like this is, and don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I want to just make sure everybody knows what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Venezuela should just roll over and let anyone take over the nation who wants to. But like, there is a point at which you have to be, I don't know, sensible about what your actual odds are in a conflict, right? Like, there's a point where you have to just say, okay, we need to investigate a different avenue for making this work. And I don't think that policing your own drug dealers is that much to ask. I really don't. I really do. So dear God, please don't turn this into a war, Venezuela. Good Lord.
Well, yeah, I mean, and part of the Monroe Doctrine, or at least the U.S. policy, has always been that we should be more concerned with problems in our hemisphere,
Yeah.
right? Leave Ukraine, let Ukraine and Europe sort out Ukraine. But this is our hemisphere. This is the definition of our backyard, our business.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Maduro, he wants to negotiate from a position of strength too. So he's whatever showy thing he's trying to do. He obviously does not want an open shooting war because obviously our military's ability to take out his military is not disputed.
Yeah, it's laughably different. Yeah.
But the bigger issue is he has large populations within his country that oppose him and are being suppressed rather violently, and not given free voice or participation in the government.
Yeah.
So the sort of threat is if we destabilize it and sort of open up that can of worms, that the civil unrest could depose him anyways. That he's not sitting around with high approval numbers. Let's just say.
Yeah, I think
that would be the best case scenario for us. But we're willing to accept policing your drug dealers into not sending poison to the U.S.
Well, please, at least. Well, and and honestly, I think that's one of the key differences between Venezuela and, for example, Afghanistan or Iraq is if we were to just destabilize it, I think we'd find a ready, willing, dethroning crew to step up, right? And we already have other people with as opposed to with the Taliban, there really wasn't a viable replacement. And there's other situations like that going on. Like right now, with Hamas, there really isn't anybody else to step up and take that spot. But in Venezuela, there is. There's plenty of people who are like, all right, we don't really like Maduro. The moment he's out and can't suppress any other possible alternative, they'll step up to the plate. And so I'm hoping that's what happens.
Yeah, we just want a non-corrupt government, right?
Preferably
we're not invading Colombia just because their current president is a jerk to us, because they're not corrupt, and we respect that. But the level of corruption and the fact that he has these oil that he can sell to our enemies means he does have access to enough money that we have to take his threat seriously. And he has made threats, right? And he has, as a thing, is a very macho strong man with his mustache, and I think Trump is willing to call him on any threats he makes and sort of have a little bit of a, I want to say something indelicate, but let's just say a arm wrestling match, a show of manliness, and with this man, and use the military to do that. But I think ultimately the aims are right. I mean, we just want Venezuela to be like, Colombia and Chile and Brazil, and we're not asking for perfection or complete political alignment, but just don't be antagonistic and don't support openly drugs being sent to our shores from your country. It's really not a hard ask. What our expectations.
Right. Is that really too controversial? Now, once again, just so everybody's clear about my position on this, because one thing I want to just mention, one thing I get from this channel so very often is I'll say something to the effect of, well, Donald Trump's strikes on these boats seems to be slowing the drug trade into America. Right. And this is really important because in, Common Mansplaining, we do this thing where we try to show you our thought process as we're going through this. That's a statement of result. That's what we would call in philosophy, it's an is statement. It's not an ought statement, right? It's not me saying that we ought to strike drug boat ships because they produce this result. It's just me giving you the is, right? In philosophy, at least according to most philosophers, you can't breach the is-ought divide without imposing a value system, right? Now, this result may or may not be positive to some people. I think the loss of life makes it too negative to be happy with, right? So I want everyone to hear me say, we ought not shoot people just to kill them and make sure that they stop running drugs. There are better ways that I believe we ought to manage it. Now, that is that because people get lost when I say this seems to be slowing the drug trade, they'll think, oh, that's a defense of Trump. No, it's not. That's me stating just a fact. That's just me stating this is what happened.
Yeah.
That's it. Right. And
Yeah.
so I want everyone to just, be on board with that. I'll say it again. I hate shooting people. I hate loss of life. I really, really hate war. Warfare is horrible. Like it's horrible. It's something that rips the fabric of mankind apart.
Yeah.
And there basically nobody that's ever been in war that hasn't come out with trauma. Basically, it's horrible. And I'm going to say that this is on the other side of this coin, even though I hate loss of life and I hate shooting people. If you some people will see this happen and they'll act like it was unexpected. Warfare sucks. Warfare sucks. And this is, in fact, warfare. They're declared enemy combatants of the state. They're considered to be foreign terrorist units. And that's it. Now, that doesn't make it morally right? And it again, there's the ought. I don't think we ought to do this. But the fact that we will do it and we are doing it, these are unavoidable at the moment. And if I had the power, I'm not president and I never want to be, right? If I had the power to stop it, I would, but I don't have that power. So don't look at us and act like we have some kind of moral culpability in these actions. We don't. We have nothing to do with it, right? So
I don't think any generations of Venezuelans, I don't know if they were involved in the world wars. I don't think they were. Have any idea what war really means?
Yeah, right.
And so and so it's more a concept or a story or something where it does need to be a last result, but peace is achieved through strength, right? Yeah. And so threats of war or showing that you're not unwilling to use war-making capabilities, especially when you have superior war-making capabilities, is a legitimate negotiating tactic. It's mean-spirited and bullying, but ultimately, I think if you're calling the United States a bully, what we're asking them to do is not out of line. We're just asking them to get a clue and behave like everybody else is. This is kind of what bullies. We just want to enforce norms, right? Hey,
bully.
Yeah, right?
Well,
hey, stop acting weird. Stop acting weird, Venezuela. Boom, boom, and it's unseemly. I will say my position, since you have so bravely come out and say that you're against these. I'm with them on a short leash. I'm not with them forever. I think the fact that they are being done with hundreds of people viewing them, with opportunity for legal counsel, JAG officers to give advice to officers, to comment, to write papers on them. The fact that there is media scrutiny, I think those are all positives. And I think, so I think for right now, the classifications, while they are minute, I do think that they are meaningful. I'm going to buy them right now, that they're this terrorist classification I'm going to go with. But I'm not on that forever, right? We need to see.
When you get off the boat.
Yeah, we need to see. So if we're in the same place endlessly, my support will not. What is shine. But for now, I'm giving them a chance to use this as a way to sort of come to an agreement with Venezuela, see a deterrent, come to a negotiation, sort of like tariffs. My position is I don't like tariffs, but using them temporarily to get sort of things back in line, our trade deals back in line with where we want, is an unconventional approach, but I'll give you a little short leash to use it, right? Well, I want to kind of I would say a year from when this started. So let's say we're 3 months into this. I would like to see in 9 months a clear thing of, all right, we're going to either escalate to achieve this said goal, or we're going to draw back and do enforcement, or this negotiation has been reached.
Yeah.
So yeah, us endlessly killing people, I don't obviously is not what we want to do. And I hope that we would that this would be a means to a more civil end.
Yeah, but the means doesn't justify. Man, you're colder than I am.
Right now, I'm giving them a little bit of a leash, and I'm buying their
Well,
legal justifications.
that's a
Yeah,
lot of leash, in my opinion. A
yeah,
year of killing
yeah.
people. All right. Well,
Yep.
but here, what I just did with
Of
Christian,
terrorists.
what I
Yeah.
just did with Christian guys, I want you guys to do the same thing though with yourselves, because this is what I want. What I want to see from the left, for the people who just hate everything Trump does. I want you to perform the same exercise in reverse, because there's a lot of people in chat, for example, that are like, "Oh, this is wrong and it's horrible and we should never do it." And I agree with the fact that it's wrong. I agree that we shouldn't be killing people, but run that exercise backwards. Because here's the question: right now, drugs are being run into the country, and that's wrong. And arresting them hasn't stopped it. So, what do you do next? Ask yourself these questions. And if that doesn't work, what do you do next? And if that doesn't work, what do you do next? Do you ever get to the point where you're willing to take life? Or do you just at some point just say, oh, I guess we can't stop the drugs. I guess we'll just let them come in? Because that's the exercise in reverse, right? Because what the problem is, I see people say, oh, Trump's doing the wrong thing, but they don't ever ask themselves how to fix the problem, right? They'll just say, well, what he's doing is wrong. It's like, okay, well, what would you do to solve the problem? And they're like, no, he's just doing it wrong. I'm like, okay, what would you do to solve the problem? Because we've been arresting them. Like, this isn't the first drug arrest that we've had, right? Like, we've done that. I can't tell you how many times. Like, Miami Vice is a thing for a reason, right? Like, anyway, my point is just run this exercise to yourself, so that way you learn how to do the introspection. That way you learn how to see what your actual limits are. And if you may find that you reach that limit, and you're like, okay, there is nothing that I will do to stop this. Ultimately, the things that would be required to stop it, I'm not willing to do. Therefore, they'll just continue ad nauseum. So there's one more thing I wanted to get to before we wrap up. And I wanted your thoughts on this too, Christian. This is another critique that I have, right? So this is Trump, right? He's trying to deter drug dealing, right? He's trying to say drug dealing bad, and yet he pardons the ex-Honduran president who was indicted for drug dealing. So I'm trying to figure out how that doesn't send a mixed message.
All right. On the surface, it does send a very mixed message.
Thank you.
All I can say is there must be more under the surface. Right? It's sort of like, did he go snitch? What information did he give us? How has he repented? How sincere has his repentance been? And what has he done to justify that? Obviously, if he's an unrepentant drug dealer, then it doesn't make sense to do that. There's got to be more to the story that we just don't know yet, but hopefully we'll get told. And why they would make that? Because on the surface you can't justify it, and it will be. But to just say that, I feel like that's spin and lazy spin. We need more thorough reporting on what this president is doing now to help the administration, to help anti-drug efforts, what they're doing, and help understand it more, and then make our judgments. And that's not to say we might still be very critical of it, but I don't think it's just as cavalier as the left wants to paint it.
Well, yeah, probably not. I mean, it's always somewhere in the middle, right?
There's got to be a second story.
I think that, but we may never get that second story though, especially with Trump.
We'll get it. We'll get it.
What if it's or we'll get a false second story too? That Trump is good with that too.
We'll have to discern that. We'll critique it. If we don't buy it, we'll come on this channel and say they've said that the Honduran president is repenting, now helping with these activities against these drug runners and these gangs and stuff like that. If we don't buy it, we'll come here and say we don't buy it. But right now we haven't had enough to make a judgment on the case.
Fair enough.
But just a surface level spin to say like it doesn't make sense.
Fair enough. All right. Any final thoughts on on Venezuela and whether or not we're going to war or anything like that?
Venezuela, I've known many Venezuelans who are great people. I have no hatred in my heart for the people of Venezuela. I don't think anybody in America does either. Um, our we want them to live in peace and live with their neighbors and live with us in peace. We want to go back to that. It's unfortunate that they have a bad leader that has severely weakened their nation through corruption and has put them in a place um, where military activity is going to take place with their country. But I don't think us or anyone want to have all out war with the Venezuelan people, and I hope that that is enough to let common sense reign and let whatever military action be limited in scope, like at sites like Iran and Syria, etc.
Yeah, amen to that. I really do want. I mean, like I said, war is horrible, guys. It is horrible. I mean, from an ex Navy man who, and I was never in war, but just I've had enough exposure to it, to the tactics and the strategy of it, to the results of it. It is horrible. So I pray that we never get there. I pray that we don't end up there with Venezuela, because that'll just be I mean, it's maybe even worse to be on the delivering end of a bloodbath. Like that's probably just like, and I mean that's how I feel like we are with these poor little drug boats. And you would have thought that after like the first three of them, that they would either just cease all operations in the Caribbean or at least modify their strategy so that they're not driving around in these little pathetic drug speedboats, so that it's like so blatantly obvious that that's what they're doing. I mean, I don't, but anyway.
I think they take encouragement from the left, or anyone that's critical of these, or any of the bleeding hearts that say, "Oh, they're just fishing boats," or trying to give them. They feel like they can sway public opinion. Ultimately, if we as Americans are just sort of united and say, this activity, this running of drugs, is universally unacceptable by both parties and all of Americans, right? Regardless of, even if we disagree about how to stop it, or to what level of violence we should use, right? Which we disagree about on this show. We both agree that the running of drugs is
Yeah,
uh,
right.
yeah, man. If they feel like that, that's sort of reasonable, but they're feeling like, their people try to spin this in crazy ways, that these are just, humble,
Yeah,
helpless people. Like, these are people who are hardened criminals who have chosen, who have accepted the risk, probably with great rewards, and are just daring us to take them on. Is sort of a blatant middle finger, just because they don't think we have the guts. And
yeah.
Trump is not that man. Biden was,
Definitely not that
right?
man.
And this is part of the thing. The left was so far left, right? They wouldn't enforce the borders. They wouldn't enforce anything. That people thought that was who America was.
Yeah.
And so reestablishing that America's got a backbone is going to take a while, unfortunately. And I think part of that cost is because of how lax the last administration was, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
to blame, not to passively blame Biden, but I think it's part of the problem here.
Yeah. I do agree with you there. I do agree that we've lost our reputation for decisive action. Like once again, and I'll say it for like the 17th time, I hate loss of life. I hate war. I hate killing people. I don't think I hate the death penalty. I hate death altogether, right? I wish we could all live forever. Well, maybe not that, but I wish that we could all enjoy a long, fruitful life, is to live in God's grace. But that's not in the cards for some people. I really hope that Venezuela gets their act together and starts policing, their own people, and starts policing the drug cartels in their midst. And I wish that we didn't have to do it, and I pray that we don't have to take any more life. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks, and please hit like, please hit subscribe. Take all your friends about us, and we do this every Thursday, every Sunday. Catch us next time on Common Mansplaining.
Keep it coming.
Keep it coming.